successful person has followed a different and unique path. There's no way to account for the kinds of accidental connections you make in life, the people you bump into, the person you happen to be sitting next to in a film class. You want to be a filmmaker, he wants to be a screenwriter. You know, 10 years from that day you met, he's a great screenwriter, you're ready to shoot a movie, he sends you his screenplay. You know, you can't plan that. There's no way to plan it. It's almost like you have to live your life with a certain blind confidence that if it's your destiny to succeed at these things, it will happen. If you just continue to follow a straight path, you know, to do your work as conscientiously and as creatively as you can, and to just stay open to all opportunity and experience.
I would try and see if I could write some jokes and sell them, and if I could, maybe try, you know, writing for television and see what that would be like. And it was immediately successful. And while I was still in high school, the first things I wrote, I sold. And I was working on television 6 months later.
Didn't you live with a Mexican family?
I did when I was 17.
So what happened?
Not for the acting thing.
No, what happened?
So I was building dog houses, delivering newspapers.
Well, how'd you meet this family? I want to know how you met the family. How'd you meet the family? How'd you meet this family?
I met them on the internet.
I was attracted to families. Come on, what happened?
They have no internet.
What happened?
I don't know.
How'd you meet the family? Come on, babe. You know what happened.
It's a hard way. I don't want to talk. Put that down.
You want to talk about politics again?
You want to talk about
what happened? 1989? What happened? How did you meet this family? I'm serious.
I was out here.
What happened?
I was 17. I was with a friend of mine, and he said
I could stay at his house.
Okay.
Okay?
And I couldn't stay at his house.
Fucking asshole.
I know it. So I was supposed to go home, but I didn't want my dreams to be shattered to California.
Right.
Because I had nowhere to stay. So then this one guy didn't speak any English. We get to talk and whatever.
Where'd you meet him? You get to talking and he doesn't speak English.
Nothing funny went on.
Where'd you meet him?
Where'd you meet him?
Where did you meet him?
Now all of a sudden you speak Spanish.
You met him at a phone booth. That's right, at a phone booth. Why is it like pulling teeth? So you met him at a phone booth.
Because this has nothing to do with independent film.
Yes, it does. It's independent of everything, this story.
Yeah, it is. I know it is. It totally is.
So where do you think it comes from independent film? Now, what happened? How did you meet him? Was he on the phone? Were you on the phone?
What was he wearing?
Did he compliment your slacks? I don't understand how this happens. You don't know the guy, he doesn't speak English, and you end up living with him.
My friend speaks Spanish. He talked to him.
Johnny Sanchez.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk
and he says, hey, my friend's got nowhere to live. Can he come live with you? Is that right?
More or less.
And the guy says, yeah. See?
No, the guy says, I don't trust this kid. I'm going to make him work the trucks for a little while before he comes and lives with me.
So where'd you live?
So I sleep in his truck.
Okay.
And then I slept.
Working the trucks is you have to sleep in them?
Listen, I paid my dues.
Okay, so what happened? What happened?
I built dog houses in the backyard. I delivered newspapers with these Mexican people. They were nice people.
Of course.
How many dogs did they
That's
have?
great, but I'm saying, when did you move out? Did you ever see him again?
They sent him a copy of the cover of High Times when he was posing on with Vaughn.
You're on the cover of High Times. Did you send that to him? Thanks for letting me live here. See you around campus. RZ Cola.
You're from Santa Barbara. You're from the suburbs. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You want to talk about that? You want to talk about how we played lacrosse and shit and how hard that was? I never played. Oh, fucking, I was devastated. Yes, you.
I never played lacrosse. I never played lacrosse.
Okay.
But I'm fat. But look, I didn't have the same extreme journey, and that's why I'm fascinated by how you ended up living with a family that you.
I know. Let's talk about it again and again and again.
Let's talk about just once. Let's talk about just
once. We talked about it. You just told me what was the story.
Like when I made Kicking and Screaming, which was my first movie, which is the same year you made Bottle Rocket, and we didn't know each other then, but I feel like I look back at that movie and I did a lot of things in that movie because I was told that was the way you do it. You know, I did things like looping that I wouldn't have done. I did the way we cut it. I let the editor cut it first, and then I went and it took me even a couple movies to kind of learn, you know, you don't have to actually do it this way.
You mean doing Bottle Rocket?
During Bottle Rocket, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the funny thing. I feel like I was never more confident in my life than when we made that film.
Yeah.
And never less confident than when we screened it. Mm-hmm. And we screened it in Santa Monica at the AMC 17 or something like that on the 3rd Street Promenade.
For an audience.
For an audience of 400 people, and as the reels unspooled, I watched. I was sitting in the back row with all the studio executives, everybody, and I began to see people leaving.
The first day I arrived, I thought, after years of being a director in the theater, that the lights were set by the director. since they are in the theater. So I said, this is where it will be. Now let's move this light over here. And so on, I set the lights. Behind me, Toland was motioning to all the people, shut up, let him go ahead. And then balancing behind me without my knowing it, you see. I worked 5 days like that until somebody told me, and I realized what a terrible thing I'd been doing. And Toland was furious that I'd been told. A tribute to him, I think. And he said, you don't know what it means because you don't look at it from formula. So the minute I realized that, then I began asking for things which in my ignorance were impossible to do. Nobody ever asked. That I didn't intend this as innovations. It just seemed to me that anything in a frame that you could look at, you ought to be able to do these things. So Toland said, let's go ahead and try.
Is that what he did, Welles, was literally, he was not afraid of being self-conscious with the camera and making self-referential remarks with the camera and literally letting the audience understand as the camera is looking through the floor up into the ceiling. You know, Welles did this, and he did it with such conviction and with such brilliance that you began to realize, I see the camera moves, and I began noticing camera movement because he used that wide-angle lens a great deal. So Welles was the one to really break open up the Pandora's box.
An icon of courage. I'm talking about the courage of the filmmaker, the courage, the audacity. It's about courage and audacity, and I'm making this my way, and I'm going to deepen the focus. I don't care how many layers of makeup those actors sweat off. We're going to see from 1 inch to infinity in every shot. We're going to see ceilings, and we're going to tell a very convoluted mystery story about a man's life.
Now, under my contract, nobody could look at the rushes but me. If we ruined something, it didn't matter. Toland had that wonderful spirit, so we just went ahead and tried. So it was partly the great spirit of Toland, the fact that he was the greatest cameraman who ever lived and the fastest, and had that wonderful spirit, and partly my own ignorance. I didn't know what you couldn't do. I didn't deliberately set out to invent anything. It just seemed to me, why not? I mean, there is a great gift that ignorance has to bring to anything, you know. And that was the gift I brought to Kane, was ignorance.
Carlito's Way, I was doing extra work at this table, and I just, this is an opportunity for me to either get noticed in the movie or get thrown out. I mean, that's going to be the way it was.
Right, you got nothing to lose.
So when he called, when Sean said, hey, Guinea, what are you doing dancing with that girl in that scene? I got up and walked over by myself, and I says, who the fuck are you talking to, man? And they said, cut. Brian ran over and says, who are you? Who can you say that line? And Pacino said, keep it, it works. I did that in quite a few films that I would just...
What else did you get upgraded?
It Could Happen to You with Nicolas Cage. I was one of the bowlers. And Henry Bronstein, who is now an executive producer on Sopranos, was the first AD. He was going to fire me because I kept talking. And then the director came over, Andrew Bregman, and he says, no, it works, and then I got an upgrade there. So they used to call me the Upgrade King. I swear to God, I was doing all the...
Did it ever not work?
I love this story.
Did it ever not work?
Did it ever not work? Did you ever get...
I got sent home, yeah, TV shows. TV shows.
That's the stories I want to hear.
Saturday Night Live.
They couldn't handle your magic.
I got sent home on One Life to Live one time. Get it out.
Did they send you home? How did they bring you to the side?
Well, the first AD comes over and he says, you're not supposed to say that. You're an extra, moron. You're an extra. Because they treat you like, shit. They treat you like shit. I really feel bad for all the extras that got to work.
To all the extras, man. All the Tab Hartleys.
That's right.
All the people who talk.
Well, lines.
None of us have
late. When you start late, here, John.
None of us have alcohol. It's just...
When you start late and you just say, I got to do it now, because I'm 42 when I started it, and I say, I got to do it now. I don't have no time.
You had to go for it.
Yeah, go for it.
How much money did you have in your pocket when you arrived?
I left with $325. I probably landed with about $225, and I stopped at a McDonald's, and I saw this newspaper when I got to Burbank. I was staying in Burbank, and it said extra work. You could be an extra, and you had to pay $25, and they take your picture and they send you out.
Did you get some extra work?
Yeah, by that Friday.
I delivered the script. They said, very nice. We're going to buy it from you for, we're going to give you 20 grand, and we'd like to have Ryan O'Neal play the part, or Burt Reynolds. Oh, God, you know, I really have my heart set on this. They said, but no one knows you. I said, I understand that, so I'll work for free, because it doesn't work that way. So they said, well, would you take 80 grand? I said, no. They said, well, you know, we're also thinking about going to Redford. He goes, well, if he's in Redford and he wants to do it, we're going to give you 200 grand. I said, well, that's a lot. Now, you understand, I had sold my dog. I couldn't afford dog food.
I've read that you had $106.
$106 in the bank between me and Oblivion.
And they are now offering how much? 200?
That was a 200. So Redford showed some interest, and so did John Borman. I'm going, boy, now they were starting to look at us and say, okay, would you take 300? I go home to my wife. I said, oh my God. Now you understand, we could have used it. It was really down and out. We're talking down and out. And I said, I can't do it. I can't do it. I know it'll maybe set us up for the rest of my life, but I just can't look in the mirror and go, what if? And you've come this far your whole life. And right here, you go, you can't sell it, can't do it. So they said 330, then finally they said 360. And I go, let me explain something. Don't make the movie. Don't make the movie, because I'm never going to sell it. And they said, well, you're crazy. I said, I understand that, but I'm never going to sell it. So they came back and said, okay, fine, you can do the movie. You're going to get paid $340 a week, and that's it. And I said, fine.
What did they give you for the screenplay?
And the minimum was 20 grand, and then after taxes and the ages and whatever, it was about, it cleared about 8. So I was more than happy.
We actually met each other at the Toronto Film Festival, and he had actually seen Reservoir Dogs before I saw his movie. He saw it at a Telluride, and then I show up at the Toronto Film Festival. I heard about this guy, Robert Rodriguez, and this $7,000 movie he'd made, and we bumped into each other and proceeded to just like vomit dialogue at each other for about 45 minutes, just right away. I mean, and it was like literally like, as we walked away, and we were yanked away 45 minutes later because he had to do an interview and I had to do an interview, and we're walking away thinking, man, if I knew a guy like that in school, that guy would be my best friend.
And then Woody Allen you worked with a few times in a row, right?
That's special.
What were you in?
Mighty Aphrodite.
Mighty Aphrodite, and after that, you had the part in
Small Time Crooks.
Small Time Crooks, that's right.
He loves you, right?
You know,
What's that like?
It's, you know, when working with him is like, you know, it's as high as it gets for me, you know what I mean? Like, it's like the, you know, you go to work and you're like, oh shit, I'm working with Woody Allen. And like, for me, like, I never, you know, I'll always put aside the amount of respect and the fact that I'm a huge fan while I'm working with him. But the minute I turn away, I'm like, Woody Allen, man, you know, it's, I mean, everybody, you get those people where you work with people that you are really, really, truly happy to be working with, and that you like, fucking, like I got a Woody Allen poster in my house. I mean, it's Woody Allen.
How do you choose your partners in a film?
Well, I try and work with my friends as much as possible because it makes life very simple. I've been very lucky because I've been able to work with Diane Keaton many times now. So that's a big help immediately. And I have 1 or 2 actor friends that I like that can play certain parts. I create parts for them because I know them so well.
What are you stopping for? You know, I'm stopping. I'm trying to figure this out. I think according to this, we're supposed to take a left turn.
So that doesn't mean stop. Let's go.
Wait, will you give me? What the hell are you doing?
What do you mean? What am I doing?
You got your hat on backwards.
Yeah, so?
What do you mean so? It's if the flashlight goes in the front.
Yeah, but it looks cooler like this.
What are you, a jerk? What do you mean it looks cooler?
It's a lot more stylish than that. Look at that.
You think so?
Yeah, turn it around. This is chic like this. Yeah, look at that. That's cool.
You got a mirror?
No, I don't got a mirror. That looks good. Look at yourself. That looks good. I'll show you when we get out.
All right.
Can you keep going, please?
All right. I'm trying to figure them out.
Embarrassed, yes.
I have been.
If you appear on a magazine cover and they say a genius, everyone must hate you and you must feel like a fool. You know, how can you take that seriously for a minute? So I was embarrassed by it. I would have liked I would have liked them to put my picture and to say a terrific new movie or a very funny new film. That would have been perfect.
You know, I was a reasonably happy kid, I guess. I was brought up in Brooklyn during World War II. My analyst says I exaggerate my childhood memories, but I swear I was brought up underneath the roller coaster in the Coney Island section of Brooklyn. Maybe that accounts for my personality, which is a little nervous, I think. You know, I have a hyperactive imagination. My mind tends to jump around a little, and I have some trouble between fantasy and reality.
The assignment was the pilot for Night Gallery. It was a trilogy, and I was going to direct the second middle segment with Joan Crawford being the star. And in it, Rod Stewart wrote the piece. I remember more than anything else, the first day of shooting, the crew had a very antagonistic reaction to my involvement as the director of the show. Joan giving a speech and standing up and saying, I have great respect for this director. I've worked with him before, A Small White Lie, and I want you to treat him as well as you would treat me. We're all in it. We're all professionals. And I'll never forget that speech he gave to the whole crew.
I was grabbing Dolly Parton's ass in a movie called Straight Talk.
I saw that with James Woods.
Yes, exactly. That was my first gig. I got my union cards, and I have top billing in the movie because it's in order of appearance. And you see the back of my head before you see Dolly Parton. I had 2 lines.
Well, Aaron Rubin actually gave me my first 8mm camera, and I used it, made some little home movies, and Dad was very interested in me learning how to use it, and played around with it. But it was really as a young mid-teen that I became hooked on the idea. I discovered the movies and really became a fan. And then I acted for a young director doing a movie for Disney when I was 15. It was called The Wild Country. Very formulaic Disney kind of movie. But this guy, Robert Totten, he was great. And he was only 31 years old, I think, at the time. And he had directed his first feature film at 21. And I mentioned that I was interested in directing. And his attitude was, what are you waiting for? Whereas everyone else had always been rather patronizing about it. You know, he gave me the belief that I could probably still direct a feature film when I was a teenager. You know, I could do it. And I really began aggressively writing, making movies, and editing them together, and the films became, you know, a bit more sophisticated as I went along through high school.
I thought that the way to get into movies was through the kind of art world, through film festivals and stuff, because that's how everybody was getting, you know, known, you know, Soderbergh and all those guys. And so I tried that. I'm not good at that, and I'm bad at that, you know, and I just, you know, was failing, and I looked around my house and I said, you know, saw my movie posters that are up, and I saw Jaws and The Exorcist and, you know, and Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I said, you know, I should just make one of those. And, you know, I don't think people, you know, wait for permission to make one of those. Just go make one of those. So I sit down and I said, you know, I love ghosts. Let me just make a ghost story. So I started writing a ghost story. And so it was really kind of the freedom of realizing, you know, you love this kind of food. Why don't you, as a chef, make this kind of food? And I guess I was waiting for someone to give me permission, and I realized, you know, nobody gives you permission for that.
To have this kind of a reasonable amount of unreasonability to even become a filmmaker, because reasonability dictates that, like, hey man, you're not from Los Angeles, you don't work near a movie studio, you're not born into this business, you can't be a filmmaker, that's for other people. You have to have a reasonable degree of unreasonability. You have to be able to be like, no, it doesn't have to be that way, but not enough where you're like, but I'm going to change the world, just enough where like, I'm going to do it, fuck them what they say.
Who is Zinni? My grandmother. What role did Zinni play in all of this?
Well, she paid for me to go to Morehouse and NYU and financed my films too.
Is Zinni still with us?
Yes, I was in Atlanta with her yesterday. He's 94 years old. All that money is just from a Social Security check that she saved over the years, because she was an art teacher. So she worked 50 years teaching art.
Oh, you know, you never work with Spike.
I don't care to either.
Really?
You don't care to work with
You
him?
don't like Spike Lee?
But what if he said, yo, I want you to be in this movie? You,
I don't know.
you would be in
I
it?
think we met one time and the energy was fucked up. So you know how black people are like, well, fuck you then, motherfucker. You ain't gonna pay me no money anyway, bitch. So go about your business.
But what if it came around and something came up? Would you work with him?
I don't know. Tell you the truth. You know, maybe you know, he killed me with the Malcolm X. I think he fucked it up. You know.
Do you?
Yeah, you don't film a story like that and cash yourself in it as the fucking sidekick. It makes it like a fucking joke. Like Malcolm X.
But that was only 20 minutes of the movie, though.
Nah, but if we're watching Schindler's List and you know, let's put some comic relief in here. You feel me?
Yeah, but wasn't there that character in the book, though? There was that character in the book. Are you saying that fucked up the whole movie for you?
I'm just saying that, yeah, like, what the fuck is a sidekick? What the fuck is he
But that was even before Denzel.
But that was the early days, right? When with the hair relaxer.
It was a zoot suit.
And the
It was like Denzel did the shit. You know what I'm saying? But then a film is everything. So your weakest thing in a film, to me, can turn out the biggest blemish on the film. You see what I'm saying? If you got this stupid thing, like you shoot Dr. King's
What about Do the Right Thing?
That's cool. No, it's cool. That was cool.
I met Spike when I was 18.
No shit.
And in Europe.
Can you see that?
And we became like little, you know, friends for a while. And I thought all of that media stuff was just not the case at all. I mean,
Hey, John, if you were on a press line...
It's like the guys who invented Dogma, you know, the whole Swedish film movement. Those guys don't mean half of that manifesto. I mean, it's this amazing... It creates this amazing...
One thing you can't say about Spike is as far as taking himself and making him... He's a brand name. Spike Lee.
No, I respect that.
Working with him as an actor brings out the best in you. And it's amazing because I think the same thing about Woody, and those are probably the two directors who communicate with you the least.
School ended in May. I just finished my sophomore year. So I came back to New York, tried to find a summer job, couldn't find one. And so with the Super 8 camera that I had gotten, I just spent the whole summer going around shooting stuff in New York City. And that summer happened to be the summer of the blackout. And that summer was also the first summer disco. And there were always block parties around everywhere, and people would just plug up their turntables to the street lights. And that's the first summer that the dance, the hustle came out. And so I made a film called Last Hustle Brooklyn. It was real intercut with the looting from the blackout with the block party stuff. And so that's when I really decided I wanted to be filming. Do something that I know I can do. That's when I wrote the script that She's Gotta Have It.
Where'd you shoot that on?
Super 16, black and white film. Shot in 12 days in the summer of 1985.
Read in Time magazine that you don't work to make a profit, that if you make a $1 profit, it's okay with you. Money doesn't mean anything for you?
Well, when you say money doesn't mean anything, it doesn't mean to me, as I wouldn't make a picture for the money. I mean, that's not my interest when I make a picture. Everybody in show business that has any success at all automatically makes a lot of money. Now, I make a lot of money compared to my sister, who is a school teacher. I don't make a lot of money compared to Barbra Streisand, who's an actress. So I'm not interested in high finance the way many movie actors are, but just what I make automatically is still enough money. I mean, it's still more than I ever thought I would make when I was 10 years old.
Working with Francis, and he we were doing this funeral scene, and it was over. The shooting day was over. We lost the light. Although there was some light left, but it was 6 o'clock. And in those days, the studio, those producers were right there, and they said it's over. And I remember leaving, and I felt rather good about it being over because I was tired, a long day. And of course, you know, I'm not behind the camera. I don't know what's going on. I saw Francis sitting there, over the gravestones. A real gravestone. He was crying, literally sobbing. And I went over and I said, what's the matter? He said, they won't give me another setup. He was crying about it. And I thought, this is how much it meant.
For example, I'm starting a film now in 3 weeks, and we don't really have the money for it all together. But we're in a position where we have all the people and we're working on it, and we want to continue working on it. So each week you say, well, let's go another week, and you're sort of financing it yourself, hoping that next week someone will come in with the money. And what happens is then you get so far deeply into the production that you sort of have to go all the way, and then suddenly someone says, well, you owe $14 million.
Now, you raise an interesting point there that people who fancy themselves artists probably could understand, but people who fancy themselves businessmen are probably going, Francis, that's how you get into trouble. Get the money first, then go to work.
Well, you know, I mean, it's my feeling when you want to get a movie going, it's so easy for someone to come in and say, well, we don't like that idea, or we don't think that's like anything that's done well. So really, if you want to start, my feeling is just start and follow your heart. And really, Godfather 2, I remember we had spent $1 million building the sets before Paramount ever told us we could make it.
Now, see, now what would have happened if Paramount said, oh, we've decided against it? I mean,
well, that's sort of what has happened to me at certain times, and this notion of me being a risk taker isn't really so true. It's not that I'm a risk taker, it's just that once we're making the film, we don't want to stop, and we sort of, maybe in a naive way, think that, oh, it'll all work out. And we really just keep, you know, like what would happen if they said, look, at the money for the show is gone now, and do you want to keep doing it, or should we tell the audience to leave? And I mean, we say, let's do the show and worry about it when it's all over.
Yeah.
And that's really how it is. It's the risk part is the least important. We're not thinking about that. We're thinking about the film.
You're making a movie for like $20,000, $10,000. There may be shit in your script or shit in your head that you feel that's the whole movie, dude. Without it, there's no point. That you might have to let go of. You have to be willing to make a concession, man. If somebody's writing you a check, that's a great thing. If it's not big enough check to do what you need to do or what you feel you want to do, then you have to come to a decision whether you're like, okay, I appreciate the offer of this money, but can you hold on to it until I have something that I can tailor into this budget? Or you look at your project and go like, how can I make it fit into these confines?
Crossroads in every movie, and if you hit it right, if the script is well constructed, that scene, if it's taken out, the movie loses everything. It's like a joke without a punchline. And they said, we're pulling the plug, we're going over schedule. It's like 8 o'clock at night. I said, you can't. This is the key scene. This is what the whole movie is about. This is the summation. This is it. This is the cliff note. This is it. He goes, no, doesn't work. We don't. It's not that important. I said, I'm begging you. I'm begging you. Do not touch that fuse. Don't turn off the light. And he goes, are you threatening us? I said, I'm not threatening you. I'm just telling you. Give me one take.
You want to know for the first time in my life, see? That weren't just another bum from the neighborhood.
Where even as when I did my first film, when I did Strapped, I mean, the producer was a very established producer, and I was doing my first project, but he wanted me to do something that I disagreed with, and ultimately he felt I wasn't taking his advice, and his question was, do you want me to leave or you want me to stay? You know, if you're not going to listen to me, I'm going to leave. And I said, well, then you should go, because he asked me, he said, I'm here to stop you from making the mistakes that I've made. And I told him that unless I make the mistakes that I won't learn anything. And there's no reason for me to be here. And I think if that's what you're here for, then you probably should leave. There's no reason for you to be here either. You know, and he left. And the studio's upset at me, and HBO's mad, and it kept telling me to call him and say I was sorry. I was like, sorry about what? All I'm trying to do is tell the story I know. You know, I'm trying to tell the story from these kids' point of view. And he wants me to do it in a different manner, and I don't understand that. I'm not making his film. You know?
But I do think that I have a chance of making some interesting films
for smaller budgets with my own money, or a lot of it. I think that the film I've just finished is like that. I hope to make another one, but I don't expect anybody else will give it to me. I don't get jobs as a director. The only pictures they offer me, I can't accept it.
One offer did come along. It was for a car crash comedy called Eat My Dust. Well, I'd been writing scripts, one of them with my father, that I wanted to try to get independent financing for, to direct. And I was also making short films on the weekends and stuff like that. So I went to Roger Corman, who was then one of the only real outlets for filmmakers just coming out of college or just getting started. I went to Corman, and I was still 21 years old at the time. And I said, I don't much care for Eat My Dust, but I would act in it if you'd allow me to make another film for you. And so he looked at some of my short films, and he said, well, I won't promise you a full directing job, but I will promise you a chance to direct second unit on something. But I'll also let you and your father write a script. If I like the script, I'll let you direct it, providing you'll act in it. So we did Eat My Dust, and it was a big theater drive-in near you hit, very modestly budgeted, but returned a great profit for Roger Corman. And he eventually said, if you'll make another car crash comedy, I'll let you can direct it. So my dad and I concocted one. In fact, Roger had only one stipulation beyond my being in it. And that's that it had to be entitled Grand Theft Auto. Because when they were testing titles for Eat My Dust, Grand Theft Auto had come in a close second. So he wanted to make another car crash movie called Grand Theft Auto. So we cooked up a movie. My dad had a storyline that he was nursing along that we sort of adopted and applied to this, and God, in no time, we had a green light to make my first movie.
It was one of the greatest scripts. I mean, even at 13 years old, you're starting to get a discerning sort of screenplay palette, and this was a phenomenal screenplay. But Rob Reiner is casting it. Is directing the picture, so it's casting, and we're there. And I know that River Phoenix is in auditioning, and I'm waiting, and I've got that audition kind of jitters, waiting to go in, and he's in there for a long time. And finally, he comes out, and there are tears streaming down his face, and he's still kind of heaving and sobbing from this emotional scene that he had done. Clearly nailed his audition, and we give each other a kind of actor hug, and well, good luck. And he said, yeah, man, thank you so much.
You went in?
Yeah, and then I go in, and Rob Reiner's in there with his sunglasses on in his dark room. Everyone's sitting back there going, go ahead, Sean, go ahead.
That's funny. It's so funny. Experience that. I think that for all actors, you go. I was at a stage where not just that movie, but 4 or 5 films, I would come in second for. It'd be me and another guy, and I wouldn't get it. So it's like playing sports or anything else. If you close, you strike out. You got to forget that and go about your work, the process. But see, auditioning is different because people that are strong auditioners, they can get to a certain level very quickly and be comfortable with something. But for me, it takes me a lot longer just to daydream and think about it and imagine whatever to actually get to a set and feel prepared to actually commit to playing a character and understanding it. And I think that, so when you go into an audition, you're not really working from the place you're used to working from, where you're just sort of, I'm playing this character, here's my backstory, this is what matters, whatever. You're going in trying to win a part, and a lot of it's just the BS in the room. Do I shake his hand? Do I make this guy this? What are they looking for? Such a strange, mixed bag of what they're looking for.
Because they have blue eyes, they have brown eyes.
What goes against the whole audition process goes against what you're taught as an actor.
That's
if you're
right.
not taught it, it still goes against it. Your instincts. You're in a room with somebody who's answering the phone who gave a shit about you, and you're reading off some.
Well, that's particularly bad over here. You love the move where they get a phone call, like you're in the middle of the reading, and they get a phone call. And they say, "Can you hold on a second?" That's happened. And they get on their phone. They're like, "I know he was such a jerk at the party," and they roll their eyes like they want to get off the phone.
If I have to cast, like in interiors, I had to work with strangers outside of Diane. They were all strangers. I picked those people that I thought would be best for the part, and I was very nervous about it, very worried that there would be all kinds of problems, and it would be hard to work with them, and they were temperamental or very great, but they were all very friendly. Nothing that I was afraid of happened.
Anymore. Mom, don't say that. That's true. You know that's not true. Mother, it's all right, Mom. What's the matter? Nothing. She's fine. Come on, Mom. Mom, it's a trial separation. Of course it is, Mother. I mean, we've been through this before. It just takes time. Everything will work out. Mother. Enjoy it. No, I don't think that's exactly the right way.
And I've always found that my career happened as it's a result of a tremendous synergy of all the talented people I've worked with, all helping each other, all connecting and reconnecting in different combinations. So, you know, it would seem that identify talented people around you, and then instead of going into competition with them or trying to wipe them out, you know, make alliances, make creative friendships, you know, that allow you and your friends to grow together, because someday your friend is going to be sitting across the desk from you running a movie studio, you know, and he may be the one who gives you the job.
Raiders was the moment I was like, that's it, this is what I'm doing for a living. 12 years old, went with a friend of mine to the movies. Didn't even want to go to this movie. What is archaeology? I'm not even, what is this? I'm not interested. I can't believe you're forcing me. Then there was a huge line. We couldn't sit together. I was so angry. Sat with this older couple who saw that I was, you know, I was like this tall when I was 12. And the couple was really, you know, knew that I was uncomfortable and not, you know, happy. They bought me popcorn and soda. Again, nowadays you'd be like, I'm not going to eat this. Who are you? You know, but back then it was like a sweet gesture. I was so touched, you know. And they you know, they bought me this popcorn, and I said, oh, thanks. And then, you know, the thing opens up, Paramount logo comes on, and this movie, I was unbelievably blown away, and came out of the theater, and I was like, that's what I'm doing for a living. So I didn't tell my parents yet, who are both doctors, but at 12 it was all done, and started making movies, little movies. And so I was kind of at the right age, at the right time when, you know, Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T., all these seminal movies of incredible artistic and entertainment value came out right when I'm so impressionable. And so, you know, the world lost a really mediocre doctor. So
the thing I really want to emphasize is I didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice. When you have a dream, and the dream isn't something you dream and then it happens, the dream is something you never knew was going to come into your life. Dreams always come from behind you, not right between your eyes. It sneaks up on you. But when you have a dream, it doesn't often come at you screaming in your face, this is who you are, this is what you must be for the rest of your life. Sometimes a dream almost whispers. And I've always said to my kids, the hardest thing to listen to, your instincts, your human personal intuition, always whispers, it never shouts. Very hard to hear. So you have to, every day of your lives, be ready to hear what whispers in your ear. It very rarely shouts.
When you're a young filmmaker, and you don't have resources, you have to turn the negatives into the positives. And so we have to come up with creative ways to get around the fact that we didn't have any money. Right? So all the films I've done, that's the one I can't watch. A lot of people say that's their favorite film of mine, too. That really bothers me.
Spike, that's not my favorite Spike Lee film. How much did it cost you to make that film?
$175,000.
How much did it gross finally at the box office?
$8.5 million.
This film that you refused to watch won the Best First Feature Award at the Independent Spirit Awards and the Young Cinema Award at the Cannes Film Festival. So you must have done something right.
Someone comes up to me and says, you know, I want to be a filmmaker, I want to be an actor. You know, I'm trying to talk to my parents, what do you think, what should I do, and all this stuff. And I'm like, if there's a choice involved, don't do it. For sure. If there's a choice, you want to be an engineer, you want to be a dentist, and you're thinking about doing this, I love movies. I want to be a director, I think, you know. Don't do it. Don't do it. If there's no other way, there's just no other way. I was like, imagine you've lost the person that you love. Your parents think you're a failure. Everything has gone wrong. Everything. Do you still want to be and it takes 20 years, 30 years, and everybody says you stink, you're terrible. You spent all that time, all regret. Your whole life is defined by your failure to do this. Is it still something you want to do? Then go do it, because there should be no other choice in the matter. It takes like an irrational passion
passion to do it. There will be those people that kind of do the process and then get lucky and fall into it, but I don't want to watch movies by those people. I want to watch movies by the people that there was no other choice.
My advice to a young filmmaker is to make a movie every week in Super 8 or high def, write every night, and every weekend shoot for 2 days and work with actors, work with a little 1,000 watt lighting kit, set up your shots, get a tripod, shoot a little scene, work with the actors, cut those scenes together, and then the next weekend have worked on it with sound and looping and put some music to it. It can all be done for nothing nowadays with a computer. And get a response. And get a response from the audience and see where it's slow and where it doesn't work and where your ideas weren't being communicated properly. Learn from that experience sitting in with the crowd. Then go out and make another picture the next weekend. And just keep doing it. Make films, no matter what anybody says, and you'll be a filmmaker.
Have you ever worked for Miramax?
Chasing Amy.
Really? Was it a positive experience?
Well, they didn't want me to do the movie.
That's frustrating.
That was very frustrating. They wanted David Schwimmer and Drew Barrymore to play the part. And they wanted us to get back together at the end. Kevin said, no, I don't want that. And they said, well, then here's $75,000, go make it. So they kind of left us
After all wraps, it's probably the right move. $75,000. You made the film for $75,000.
We shot in 16 minutes.
That's an independent movie.
But then Harvey saw it and was like, okay, I like it. But there was that moment where Harvey was watching it and you're just waiting, and Kevin was so nervous and he was going to say, take out the crying scenes and shoot some funny stuff.
No,
but he didn't. He was great.
I think it's his best movie, actually.
But
if you get the passion, to do it, and you do it, and it doesn't like work out. I worked got 3 years on a 16mm film that ended up becoming nothing but guitar picks, and I was very disappointed when I realized it wasn't any good. But it was my film school, all right, and I actually got away really cheap. When it was all over, I knew how to make a movie. I didn't want to show anybody that, but I had the experience. I had it a lot cheaper than I would have gone if I'd gone to film school.
That's the other, do it in Spanish and subtitle it, they'll think it's an art film. That's the other advice. It worked for me. It was as exploitation as it could get, but I remember when it played at Telluride, all these old people come out of the Telluride Film Festival and they're like, it was like an opera.
I was like, oh my God, I'm ruined. And about 30, 40 minutes into the movie, I was just like, you know what? This would be, I spent on this movie what I would have spent going a year of good film school, so let me consider this film school. Maybe one day I'll be able to pay this debt off, and if I do, then I can think about maybe making another movie.
You can find a way in, even if it means you're mimeographing your own book or you're shooting on video or whatever. You know, of course you're going to be aware of how that limits your audience, but instead of just sitting around moping and saying, oh, they're never going to give me enough to make my $5 million movie in 35, maybe that thing can be expressed in other ways first. And then maybe, like, you know, some fairly famous filmmakers, that will get enough notice and you'll get to remake it later in the 35 mil, you know, version with the real budget.
My first director was probably the best director I've ever worked with, a guy named David Onspa, and he directed Rudy. He was so great the first day. This is a good director. The first day, it was my first time ever on a set that wasn't like a TV show or commercial, where I had more than one day's work. And I did my little performance of the scene, and he pulled me aside, and he says, you're wearing a mic? And I was wearing a lav, you know, a little mic like this, and a little pack on your back, and he looked, he turned it off, he walked me away, and he went, if you don't mind me saying, do it a little bit, bring it down a little bit. Yeah, a little bit smaller. And I said, he says, do you mind me saying? I said, no, I'm happy you're telling me this.
Nice. Yeah.
And I thought, how cool. That said so much as I walked away that he had the respect to turn my mic off so the crew didn't hear on their headphones what I was saying. And another time,
it's incredible.
The crew was sort of grumbling, and he said, do you want another take? It was the end of the day. I said, nah, everybody's sort of tired. Because you like the crew. You're working with everybody.
Yeah.
You're spending most of your time with the crew, not with the director. And I said, nah, everybody's getting tired. And he was like, let me worry about everybody. Do you want another one? And I was like, yeah, I want to try it again. And he did. And he just made me feel so protected from all the distractions that you might have. And just a wonderful, thoughtful.
It should be a director's job. You don't feel as safe as you can possibly.
And would push me further at times.
Well, actually, the takes on a movie is the least amount of time. All the time is spent is the lighting and the waiting. So, you know, the take is like 30 seconds.
It's like Orson Welles said, it's not the acting they pay you for, it's the waiting.
You think it's still possible for an upcoming filmmaker to go the route you guys went and still be successful?
That's a good question.
Make Reservoir Dogs.
That's a tough.
Actually, no, I'm not even being a smart ass. That was a fucking kick-ass movie. All right, you make a goddamn kick-ass movie, and you can take it all over the planet Earth. Not America, not Los Angeles, not New York. The planet Earth, and everyone will know it.
But there is a lot more competition than there was when I was, like kicking around with El Mariachi. So you got, there's just a lot more to do these days. You got a lot more competition because everybody's got a camera now and everybody can edit, and it's tough.
Seeing people like Robert and Rodriguez and Richard Linklater and Spike Lee, even Martin Scorsese back in the day, make their first film, and that kind of launches them into making the next film. They pay for the first one and have their mom help them make food or whatever in the case of Scorsese's flick. Next film, somebody's giving them money to make a movie, and that's all I wanted. We wanted to make Clerks just as a showcase film to be like, look, obviously we know how to make a movie, so can you give us money for the next one? So that was always the plan. It was a two-tier plan. Make Clerks, bring it to the IFFM, it will get sold, and then we think about the next one.
Like the first real big movie we were in was called Swingers. In trying to raise the money to do Swingers, we would do stage readings.
For about a year.
For about a year. And none of those readings turned into anything as far as money went, because producers would like it and they'd say, hey, we'd like to try to raise the money. We were all unknown actors. They couldn't help raise the money. We finally shot it for $250,000. But by the time we hit the set, we knew our parts inside and out.
Yeah.
So wherever we were, and sometimes we worked without permits, we would just land, do the scene, and usually, of course, you discover something new on the set as well. The more you rehearse, the more you discover. And I think a lot of what made that movie a quality film, in spite of all the constraints, was all that time that we had spent inadvertently rehearsing.
I've been miserably unlucky with producers and the money end of film production. I think genuinely unlucky. I think I've had a lot of real bad breaks. I'm not crying about it, but it's true. But I've had the most wonderful good breaks, and the most wonderful thing that anybody could have from the people you work with behind the camera and in front of it. I haven't got anybody I could complain of in all these years.
Of course, I was immensely impressed with Churchill, but he was quite another thing, He had great humor and great irony. He went to see me when I played Othello on the stage in London, and I heard a low murmuring in the front row. I thought he was talking to himself, and then he came backstage afterwards and sat down in the dressing room and said, "Most potent, grave, and reverend signors, my most approved good masters," and began the whole of Othello's part, which he had memorized, and including the cuts which I had made, which he read with a good deal of extra emphasis. And then a few years afterwards, I happened to be in Venice trying to get some money for a movie during the festival, and poor Churchill had been, right after the war, as you know, crest of the greatest victory that any single man had ever presided over in modern history, was voted out of office. Quite properly, probably, but it was a tragic blow for him. And there he was in the hotel at the Lido with Clemmy, his wife, alone. And he'd go swimming out on the beach. And one day at lunch, I came in with a Russian businessman I was trying to hustle for some money for this picture. And as we passed Mr. Churchill's table, Mr. Churchill saw me and made that little gesture, and the Russian went out of his mind. This is a white Russian, not a red Russian. This is a a hustling semi-Armenian Russian. And when he saw that Mr. Churchill not only knew me, but gave a rather special acknowledgement, it was clear to me that I had the money for my picture. So the next morning I was out swimming in the beach, and I found myself paddling in the water right next to Mr. Churchill. And I hadn't gone up to speak to him. There we were in the water, and I had known him on and off during the war in a humble capacity. And I said, and he had come backstage to see me, and I said, "Mr. Churchill, I think you ought to know what you did for me." And I told him about how this acknowledgement had meant so much to me with my financier. And that day at lunch, I came in with a financier again, and Mr. Churchill rose from his chair and bowed.
That is good.
Pretty good, huh?
That's good. We'll be back after this message.
The good thing about doing X-Men 3 and Thor, well, not doing it, but doing the prep and working on it, was for me, it was like going to university and learning everything about how to make these type of films and what was the ethos behind it. But as I was doing it, I kept thinking, God, this feels old-fashioned. There must be ways of making it better. And every time I brought up some ideas, they were pushed away going, no, I don't think that would work. So that's what I loved about Kick-Ass. I mean, I tried to buy Hancock when that was a script, thinking, oh, great, this is a postmodern look at superheroes, and we've got to start doing some superhero films that are relevant to a modern audience. And when Kick-Ass came along, I was just like, yep, this is it. I can put in all my ideas, and I can push the boundaries and try and make a superhero film that is actually fresh, original, and relevant.
Enjoy with me.
No, you're a hog.
Yeah.
I'm telling you the truth. You are a hog.
Yeah.
You went up my ass, believe me. I want to tell you that. Because you didn't stick to any of the lines, and I was talking. It was my speech.
Well, here's what my problem was when I shared with you. Favreau kept coming to me going, it's like story time when we stick to the script. Do something, throw him off, get something real out of him. And a lot of the... No, that's what Favreau said. So Favreau was like, do something to make him react differently. And the weird thing in the editing room, John... I figured you work with Cassavetes. The weird thing in the editing room, John would go to, like, before they yelled action, and after they yelled cut, to get some of your reaction.
People don't understand. I remember I was doing a scene once in the picture, and it was a difficult scene. It was in the heart of They Fall with Humphrey Bogart. And I only knew one thing at the time. This guy talks as fast as you've ever seen. We're going to get this guy. We're going to make him the world champ. Don't you worry about it. We got 132 pounds. I'll have him up to 152 by the end. And if I stopped to think, I was gone. Right. I took a chance. And some guys start talking about a horse race off camera. Aye. I said, look, you make a mistake, your boss fires you. You make a mistake, this little community knows, the town knows, the city knows, the village knows. I make a goddamn mistake, the world sees it. That makes me a little bit nervous.
It was like, it was one of my first movies, and I really thought that's what I expected filmmaking to be like, and what I thought it was going to be like. But from then on, and it never really was again.
Why? Because they collaborated with you to such an extent?
It was collaborative. It was, I mean, even the screen tests, we had smoke, we had sets, we had lights, we had an incredible DP. It was
Ridley Scott.
It was like, I mean, it was Ridley Scott, who had, been an incredible art director.
Just Gena Rowland, which everybody says I got to see.
That was cool.
Yeah, that's a good movie.
Sean Connery? Yeah, Sean Connery. I was like 15 years old.
That was like your first big, real acting.
It was horrifying. Yeah, it was just, I didn't know what to expect. I got flown over to Germany, and I remember sitting at this sort of big dinner with everybody that was going to, be in the movie, and everybody's having a great time, and they were passing around this big booklet of, artifacts and pictures from that time period, and I was like, oh, let me see it, and, I reached for it, and the thing bent right in the middle, and a glass of wine all over Sean Connery.
Clerks was a multi-step film for us, and it was make it and get it done in order to screen at the independent feature film market, something that the IFP East, the Independent Feature Project, used to run back in the late 80s, early 90s. It's still around, but they've shifted what it is. Back then, it was essentially this kind of film festival where you paid $500 and they programmed your movie. And they were giving you a slot at, like, the Angelica Film Center over the course of this week, and that's wonderful art house cinema in Manhattan, down in the village area. So that you would try to pack that screening with as many potential distributors or financiers or press as you could.
All movies, whether it's a love story, whether it's a biography, whether it's a historical story, a comedy, an adventure, a war movie, a western, sci-fi, doesn't matter what the genre, there has to be a story that's worth telling. That's what it's all about. The thrills come automatically if you tell your story right.
The director said he faced that in the studio and he said, I can't do it in time.
That was important for a film like that to be shot in continuity. If not for the understanding of Richard and the characters, from my understanding of the film. Because then as I saw the dailies and saw the film being assembled, on location in the cutting room, I could add things and make the film better. I think anybody who shoots anything in continuity can always make improvements because the film is growing and becoming alive as you go forward.
No, because he'll be so energetic. He'll be screaming and yelling, it's a great white, I knew it all along. And there's only room in there for one quick line, an expository line about the mate. Where's the mate? Where's the body? Why is the boat torn to pieces? Because it's a great white shark.
They'll run it on like 3 screens in a theater, so you have a show starting every half an hour. And that way they sort of stack the deck.
Well,
so
his point was that the studio executives understand that the kids want to see it the first week.
That's right.
Is that true?
A certain age group does.
They
like
want
the
to see it the first week. Therefore, if they can show it every half hour, then they'll get a big roast. Is that right?
Yeah, but now back when you were, way back when you started off in the business, a movie would play for like a year, right? You'd have limited release. Yes. You'd have it on a few screens in every city. I think The Godfather ran for like a year.
Yes.
Right? At that time. Yes. So it was a different business then.
The content of the movie is becoming irrelevant.
Right.
It's the trailer.
It's the trailer.
Go with the expectancy as an audience to see something that's going to knock you off your feet. And you settle for a nice movie. You know? And you think, I don't want to see something different. I don't want to see something different. I don't want to. I hate it. I hate it. I want it in my film. I want action. I want this. And then when you see something that's different, you say, and you can't get it out of your mind, you're still angry with the son of a gun. And you think, I hated that picture. I hated it. I hated it. But, 10 years later, you remember it. And you think, I saw something that's interesting. And I think filmmakers should be aware that they don't know anything.
Peter, what was the release on the Cassavetes films? Did you guys get wide releases with those?
Well, John was the first guy.
Was Woman Under the Influence?
John, he's something. My God, that guy, he's something, man. We made that picture. We each put up $125. So the whole picture cost $250. And then he decided he distributed himself. Now he's up there on the phones to all over the country. Yeah.
What's that mean?
They would rent out the theater, put the movie in the theater, and then they would just collect money on it, so they would put on a...
Actually, I made money on the goddamn picture. I did. That, you see, that is being truly independent. That's a truly independent picture because you're not beholden to anybody. It's his money and my money.
When he realized that there was just no possible way of doing it the way you wanted to do it, as long as somebody else was paying for it. That's why we put our own money in our pictures, which is, it's very, that gets independent filmmaking.
You know that camera, John?
What? This one, the Eclair? That's who we shot our picture with. This is our cameraman. Come here, George. Come here. You know what we do? We would bet. Yeah, we would bet that we would shoot the best shot,
Yeah, I won all the time.
He won all the time, but only because he's stronger or something. If the camera gets heavy, as you know yourself. But here's what we had a shot. We were lying on the floor like this, see, and we had the camera this way, and now we're shooting through the door closes, we zoom, we pull back here like this. Now pick me up, George, over this way.
So, and we had...
he has to pick me up, right? And all through the house, right? So this is what we had to do in the picture to get things, because we had no dollies, no tracks. And this is one of the best handheld operators in the world, with all due respect to you.
That's because I don't breathe for 10 minutes.
He doesn't breathe for 10 minutes. We kill him, then we restore him back to life later. And holding a handheld camera, you know that you can't breathe, because if you breathe, the camera jiggers, huh? So we don't do that. We don't breathe. So we give him a shot. He's a dope addict. Total dope addict. The man is hashish, and he's in a Chinese pot house.
So let's go to the IFM and we'll get our distribution, because that's how it must happen for everybody, right? And charged a lot of equipment on credit cards that I collected over the years and shit like that. So we went into, I just think there was something really nice about going in, just kind of like, yeah, of course this will work, Everything makes sense. Why wouldn't it work? And if I'd really thought about it, I would have been like, this is fucking, that happens to other people. It ain't gonna happen to you.
movie, and this was going to be my feature, and I was like, I was financing it from working at a video store. So what means was like I would like get like $200 or so, and then we'd go off and shoot for the weekend, and then we would run out of money, and then I would like go back to work again, and then like and eventually I would just keep piecing it together. And what you would do is when you'd rent equipment from the rental house, if you rent it on Friday, you have it all weekend. It's kind of this one-day rental, and you have to return it Monday morning. So you would just burn your. I mean, you would just like get old before your time trying to like shoot all weekend long and give the stuff back.
Quentin will come in and describe a scene to you in terms of like 6 different films.
Yeah.
So it'll be, well, the first part of the scene is the opening shot from The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, and then you get to this other thing, and it's Days of Wine and Roses, and then you go from there into the, and then did that Roadrunner cartoon? Right at the end, that Roadrunner thing when he's falling down the cliff and he looks back up. That's the moment. That's the moment. And then he'll go, aren't you ready? Action. And then right in the middle of your scene, he'll laugh out loud. And, cut. And he'll go, or if he's quiet, he's behind the camera going. That was awesome. Print that.
That was a great one. So, Mr. Willis, let me ask you a question here. Is this the finest moment of your acting career, or what?
Identical. From here on in, it slides down the backside.
Okay, you want to do one more? Yeah, let's do another one here. Coming back to you. Bruce. Give just a little bit more of a slow burn, like. Just, okay. Yeah. Just like blank, and then boom, action.
It's almost like doing stage work. It's the closest thing that I've done to stage work, I think, because everybody here, I think, feels the same way I do and really respects Quentin's writing to the point of not wanting to come in and say, well, we have to take this line out and change this, and why can't I say this now? There's a respect for the writing that I haven't seen since I worked in New York on stage.
I think it's the shame about Hollywood is, someone told me an analogy, which I think some's not great. Sort of executives that are driving in their car at 100 miles an hour, but they never look through the windscreen. They're always looking at the rearview mirror as they're driving along, and not understanding why they have accidents. And they're not leaders. They're following trends instead of creating trends, and that's why I think it's become so tired. If I could, I'd like to ban remakes and make people come up with original thoughts. It's really important to, we're going to be the decade of remakes, which is sort of like what we've run out of. Imagine next year every song was a cover. Every band stopped writing original music and they just did covers of songs from the 70s and 80s. It'd get boring.
But the movie was an international sensation. It had a very small...
And it was a tiny budget.
I know about the movie.
Yeah.
And nobody... And the thing about that film was it came out of nowhere, too. Nobody...
Well, 28 places said no thanks. It was turned down by 28 different places. The script that went on to win the Academy Award.
So nothing's changed.
Exactly.
Yeah, no.
Exactly. Right. So, but it had a very small release in the States. It only made about 23 million, but in Europe it made like 100 million. Just in Europe alone. So it was this international sensation.
And it put a lot of actors on the map, too.
Yeah.
Benicio del Toro, Kevin
Spacey won his first Oscar, yeah.
And did they all sound like Alan Arkin?
Why would you say that? I don't understand. Is it me? Well, I got real lucky that Avalon was the first real movie I did in the terms of dramatic,
Did you get cast from your stand-up, or did you audition?
Barry Levinson had seen me at the Improv and had called me into audition for a few of his films.
He's a good dude.
Yeah, he's awfully good, yeah. And he likes to put a comedian in a lot of his movies. Dennis Miller, Disclosure, Dennis Leary, and Wag the Dog, of course, Diner at Paul Reiser, and Tin Men. It's a strange thing, a phenomenon. In a lot of his movies, he likes to literally have a comedian. So it was insanely fortunate that I didn't have any formal training as an actor. I had 16 years of stand-up to become comfortable in front of the audience.
Right.
So all I could really do at that point was be comfortable in front of the camera. And that transcended for Barry. He just thought this person appears to be real because they're so comfortable. When I got the job, I still was, this is a dramatic movie. Oh no, I better learn how to do this before we start shooting. And I remember I went to Barry and said, you know, my manager also represents Paul Reiser. And when Paul got Aliens, he worked with this acting coach. So I kind of would like to get him a copy of the script, maybe work with him before we start shooting. And Barry said, oh, no. No, I'm not going to let some guy come in here and fuck up what you already got going here. No, you're the guy. Just be loose and natural in front of the camera. You're the guy, okay? And so I was ridiculously fortunate that the first real dramatic work was for a director who hated to see acting. Of any...
5 different girls screen testing for my part, and we all got like several days to come up with our look, and everybody created a different, you know, thing, and most of the girls were sort of space age with little lightning bolts and really cute and mannequin-like or, you know, beautiful, and I made myself into Nosferatu, you know, like the freak, you know, with the punk hair
That makes
and
it
thing,
even cooler.
and when I saw everybody at the lunch, I was convinced that I had made myself into a hideous cartoon. I didn't get the part, and I started crying. I was like, oh no, I've totally fucked it up, you know. And I did gymnastics in my audition and rolled my eyes back and all this stupid stuff that ended up in the movie. Yeah.
What was it like when you work with somebody else, like Brando, who was very comfortable improvising too? Is that a dream come true? Or
well, no, I had a bad time with him. Everybody talks about the taxi scene on Waterfront, right?
Yeah.
Well, we go to shoot this thing. I'm off camera, and we're on Marlin. Well, I should have known something was up because we start to shoot the 2-shot, and he says to me, "How's Mom?" That's not in the script.
Right.
But I figured, well, I've been trained kind of the way he was. Let's see where we go. I said, I don't know. She was pretty good the last time I talked to her. Well, I was worrying about her. I said, well, you know, yeah, well, I said, wait a minute. And improvisation sometimes is saying what you really want to say to the other actor, but you keep it within the confines of the scene if you have the imagination to do it. I said, I'll tell you what you can do. You put 10 cents in the phone, you dial 7 numbers, the phone rings, and you say, hello, Mom, how are you? We cut. Finally, we get through it, and I'm off camera, and he's close up. And an actor, if he's any kind of a professional off camera, overacts or does anything he can do to help the other actor get the result without interfering with his performance. I'm ready now to do my close-up, and I said, where's Marlon? Kazan said, let him go home. He said he was tired.
That's a problem.
Well, I was, you know, this was a big thing for me to play Marlon Brando's brother. I mean, I had done Marty on television, but this was a film. And I did it with the script girl. That's the girl, a continuity girl, to make sure she's saying everything, whatever is right, with her doing his lines.
So all your close-ups in that scene?
Yeah, well, it must have burned his ass we came out even, you know. I think he's one of the most charismatic people that ever hit the screen in the last 50, 70 years. If he wasn't, he couldn't pause and take as long as he did. But I love to act with him again because I haven't forgotten that. That's show business, I guess.
Actors that they want to be De Niro, they want to be James Dean and all these things, so they bring all this stuff to the set. You know, you get that they have like they live in a harsh life or whatever, but De Niro comes on the set. I don't know anything about his business. I don't know how he's preparing for his work, you know, because he does that on his own time. He comes, he shows up, and he's so focused. And our big scene together was just so profound. It was.
You mean the one in the theater?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one threw me a bit, I gotta say. I didn't see that coming when I saw the movie.
Oh, that's nice.
Not at all.
That is sexual tension personified.
See, that's what I'm talking about. That's what's
from
great.
my blood from my toes up to my cheeks.
Yeah, that's why you got nominated for all those awards. Yeah.
All the reviews, they were like, I love how you capture the burgeoning sexuality of that age. And I always thought, here's a guy, he's listening to her. They don't get it. Her parents don't listen to her, and he's asking her questions about herself.
Right.
So it's really more innocent, because she's like, oh, he's listening to me. And then when he comes close to her, then it's a whole another thing. It's about pleasing, too. It's about young girl. It's about, she wanting to do something that's like, do you like that? That kind of
Right.
thing, which girls get into. It's pleasing sometimes. And I was so very much 19 at the time that I got nominated, because I did these interviews, and here was my answers, John. This is where I go, gosh, what a moron. I was so 19, but they'd go like, wow, you're 19 years old. How do you feel being nominated? And blah, blah, blah. And I was all very cynical and unimpressed. But I was 19. I had an attitude, and I was like, people are still getting murdered in the movie. Because I was with Brad Pitt that year, and he came with me, and he was in the car right before we go to the Oscars, and he had 2 pairs of shoes and then 2 ties, and he's like, it's our first time, so I think he was very nervous, and he was like, okay, should I wear this tie with these shoes? And then I was like, okay, well, let me see the other ones. Maybe this tie with these shoes, and I go, I don't know. But he kept, I think he was very nervous, and then I said,
cornrows.
Yeah, I said, Brad, I'm wearing cornrows. It doesn't really fucking matter.
Evening of the Academy Awards in New York, when Annie Hall received its various awards, I was not there, as you know, and the first that I heard about it was the following morning. I played jazz that night with my orchestra, and then I went home, and I went to sleep in New York time, 12:30.
Reading young.
Pardon me?
Reading young.
Reading
young.
Oh, that's right. Conversation. That's exactly right. And I went to sleep, and this was only 9:30 in California, and the next morning I woke. I took my phone off the hook when I went to sleep because I didn't want anyone to call me. And the next morning, when I woke up and picked up the newspaper to have breakfast, I saw on the front page of the Times that Annie Hall had been very successful there. So that was the first that I heard.
Is it a fair question to ask you what you would most like to do?
Ever. I would like to do something which would leave at least the art form concerned or the profession better for my having done it.
Successful person has followed a different and unique path. There's no way to account for the kinds of accidental connections you make in life, the people you bump into, the person you happen to be sitting next to in a film class. You want to be a filmmaker, he wants to be a screenwriter. 10 years from that day you met, he's a great screenwriter, you're ready to shoot a movie, he sends you his screenplay. You can't plan that. There's no way to plan it. It's almost like you have to live your life with a certain blind confidence that if it's your destiny to succeed at these things, it will happen if you just continue to follow a straight path, to do your work as conscientiously and as creatively as you can, and to just stay open to all opportunity and experience.
I would try and see if I could write some jokes and sell them, and if I could, maybe try, writing for television and see what that would be like. And it was immediately successful. And while I was still in high school, the first things I wrote, I sold. And I was working on television 6 months later.